Come here and say hello. Say hello. Come here and say hello. Go ahead. Say hello. I've noticed over time that a lot of big YouTube channels have a dog, and I should be eating an apple, but I didn't have an apple in the refrigerator. So I thought, and I don't have a dog, I have fish, I have Carl, but I have my neighbor's dogs that I let out during the week. That was one of them. They used to have Howard and Bernie. For any Big Bang fans, you can figure that one out. And Howard is no more. So they have Cooper again. Big Bang fans can figure that one out. They wanted to name him Sheldon, and I said that dog is not a Sheldon, maybe a Cooper. So they ended up naming him Cooper. So that was Cooper. Bernie wanted to go back inside. She's a little bit older, so I let her back inside. Welcome to another video. It's not about dogs. It's about why I don't like to critique other people's work. A few different reasons. For one, I don't know that I'm good at it. And I think that there's a lot of people that do critiques that I watch hand out critiques that I don't know that they're particularly good at it. Another reason why is because it may be in a genre that maybe I don't understand, or I don't appreciate, or I don't like, and I would give it a bad critique only because I don't really understand it. It could be that. Do I think that I can offer tips of advice to people from time to time? Sure, I think I can do that. I think there's a difference between that and doing a critique. And I think sometimes I don't like doing critiques because I've seen it ruin people. I've seen it get them down. More specifically, I was in a writers group, several writers groups over the years, back in the day, and I saw them ruin more people who were just starting out than I care to remember, and that would really upset me. And I think sometimes that happens to photographers. I was in a photo club a long time ago, and one of the reasons why, well, there were two reasons why. One, the town offered us to go out and take photographs, and it would be in their calendar for the town for the year. So we went out and did it, and we weren't going to get paid, but we were going to get photo credits, which was fine. But we were going to get reimbursed for any film we used and any cost. So I don't know how much they ended up giving the camera club. I think it was a couple $100 so that the leader of the group could pay everybody back. And in the end, the calendar came out. A couple of my images, one or two, I think, were in there out of the 12 or 13, however many they used, which I thought was pretty good because there were 20-some people in the camera club. And there was no mention of my name as taking the image. It was attributed to the president of the camera club and his camera club. So it led you to believe that the president of the camera club was the one who took all the images, the way it was sort of presented. That ticked me off. And then we didn't get reimbursed for any of that. Whatever money the town gave, the guy gave an excuse as to why we couldn't be reimbursed after we went and did all this. So that left a sour taste in my mouth, obviously. And the other reason was because they would bring in these guys to do the critiques who, quite frankly, I don't know that they really knew what they were doing or even talking about. And that's not to say that all my images that I brought in were portfolio images and deserved to be in the Smithsonian. No, not at all, not even close. But sometimes I think that they would rip it apart for very unfair reasons. And recently I found that with one of my subscribers has asked me to look at their work a few times, And I found that I run into that myself, in that they like shooting abstracts, shadows, or at least they attempt to do it. And they'll probably watch this video, so I have to kind of be careful how I word this. I don't want to say anything that I haven't said to them directly. That wouldn't be fair. And at times I try to offer tips of, hey, you know, what are you trying to say with that image? Or you know, maybe the contrast isn't right. I might have tried a different composition. You know, look at your composition. Where have you, you know, that kind of thing. Is your exposure right? But as far as commenting on the value of the image, they were very happy with it pretty much every time they send one off. And I don't want to be the one, and this isn't to say that I thought all of them were bad images, because that's not true. I did like some of these, but there were a couple that I thought, eh. But I didn't want to be the one to say, eh, you could do better. And if you're going to critique someone, you kind of have to do that. But you have to do it in a way that doesn't make them feel lost, that they've gone backwards, or that their work isn't good enough to be shown, or whatever the case may be. When I was in the writers group, there were a couple of people who were in the group. Well, let's say one of them was a very established, very good writer. She'd been published many times by different publishing houses and had a pretty successful career as an author. And there was another person who had been published by a big name publisher. I didn't read the other book that had been published, but this person was bringing in work on something that they wanted published in the future. And I read the first page of, I don't know, let's say it was 250, 300 words. And it was written in first person past tense. And I was very familiar with that because a large majority of what I write is in first person past tense. And in their writing, it was so monotonous and so boring, because everything was, I was blank, blank, blank. I was blank, blank, blank. I was blank, blank, blank. And then after all that, I was blank, blank, blank. So I tried to point that out in a nice way. I said, do you understand that on this one page, 200, 300 words, and let's assume your novel's going to end up being, I don't know, 90,000 words. But in just those 200 or 300 words, you use the word was, I think it was 63 or 65 times. And this was someone who was supposed to be a published author. And making that suggestion, this person was so offended and so upset with me, they wouldn't talk to me anymore. So I think the other side of the critique is that the person who's taking the critique has to be ready and be acceptable for the critique. And the person that I've offered the critique to, at times I think they are, and at times I think, like anybody else, they get a little hurt. And that's why I don't always like doing critiques, because I don't really want to offend someone. And I don't know that I'm doing the best job at doing it. And I don't know what the qualifications you need to have to offer critiques. I mentioned that I have fish tanks, and I grow coral and all. And I had my fish tank in one or two videos early on. And when I was first learning how to take care of it, I would watch these YouTube channels of these guys that had their own fish tanks, or at least had their channels where they would give you advice on how to start a fish tank. And this one guy in particular, I thought it was pretty good. He made entertaining videos, and yeah, and I followed some of his advice. My tank was looking eh. And so I started watching different people who were offering different bits of advice. And then the one guy that I thought was given, I learned over time, was given advice. He finally showed his tank in one of his videos, and his tank was awful. I mean, everything was dying. It just was awful. So I stopped taking his advice, and my tank soon turned around. So sometimes I don't know whether it's, and even if you go and you look at someone else's work and you think, man, they're really good, that doesn't mean that they know how to critique other people. You know, if you think about the majority of the best coaches in just about any sport, it's very rare that the best coaches were the top line players. There's a few exceptions, but it's pretty rare. Even in the major leagues, they did a study one time, or someone was talking about it one time, probably not a study, but someone was talking about it, that a lot of the best major league managers were run-of-the-mill catchers, because they saw the whole game from a different perspective. They're behind the plate, they're calling the game, they're getting the pitcher through the game, they're seeing everything. And a lot of times catchers make the best managers. Are they the best ball players on the team? No, not always. Very rarely. I mean, you know, you look at, I don't know, Johnny Bench or a few others, Yogi Berra, and even that, people say, no way Yogi Berra was the best player on the Yankees, and some might say, yeah, he was. That's for you old timers. You know, some will say, no, it was Mantle or DiMaggio or whatever, Elston Howard even. I don't know, that's for others to judge. It's a different topic. But the point is, just because you're really good at something doesn't mean you know how to critique it or how to offer advice. So I don't know what the criteria is that makes you good at offering critiques. And I'm not saying that there are people who aren't good at it. I'm just saying that, A, be careful who you take advice from. B, you have to be ready to take that critique and take that advice. And that's a whole another topic. It can be really tough to take a critique. I know when I first started writing and people would rip me apart and I would just be, ugh. It was hard to hear. And then I'd get a critique. I had one on Amazon one time from a guy who gave it 1 or 2 stars, one of my books, and just ripped the whole book. He didn't like this, he didn't like this, he didn't like this, he didn't like this. And then he gets to the end of the review, thankfully, and he says, but I don't like any book in that genre. I don't like reading them. I never like any of them. But if I had to read one, this one was probably one of the better ones that I didn't like. I'm thinking, you know, the headline essentially says the book stinks. No one's getting past that first paragraph or so in the review until you get to the end where it was like, yeah, okay, it really wasn't that bad. I just don't like this genre of book. So again, it's tough. It really is. If you're going to put your work out there for others to see, you have to be ready for it. And it's not an easy thing. If you ask for a review and you ask for a critique, you have to be ready for it. Whatever it is they're going to say. But I would say the bottom line to all of it is, honestly, if you're happy with your own work, you be the judge of your own work. You decide whether it's good or not. And then keep continuing to look at other people's work. Don't necessarily try to copy it, but at least look at it and say to yourself, what is it I like about that? What is it maybe I didn't like about it? One last example, I'm not going to tell you the name, but there's somebody on YouTube that I followed their channel, and they have a huge following. I mean, they're one of the ones that gets the free cameras and the whole bit. They're a big channel. And over time, I've sort of learned to appreciate their work. I like their videos. Their videos are entertaining. And when I first saw their work, I went, man, I don't get it. I mean, I did not like them at all. I didn't even think they were good images. I didn't get it. And the more I watch the videos, and the more I understand what they're trying to do with their work, now at least I can appreciate it. So had I critiqued it a year ago, I would have went, nah, no chance. But now, over time, it wasn't that they weren't good at what they were doing. It was my fault. I didn't see it. I didn't understand it. It's still not something I would do. You know, it's just not. They have their own little niche, and they're good at it. I mean, I have to admit, they're good photographer. Where a year ago, I would have thought, maybe they're not. And I kept looking, go, how do they have such a big channel? Well, it was me. It was coming on my end that I wasn't the one getting it. And that's another reason why I don't know that I'd be all that great, or I'm not all that great at critiquing people. Because had I critiqued them, I would have ripped them. And now that I understand what they're trying to do, I wouldn't rip them. I would appreciate what they're doing. Still isn't my thing, but at least I understand it now. Be careful who you take advice from if you do want. If you show it to your friends, the majority of them are going to say it's great. They're not going to want to offend you. If you take it to a total stranger, you have to know who that stranger is. They may be good at critiquing, they may not. And one last story, my buddy Tom, many years ago, I had this image of an osprey, that's a bird, and it was sitting way out on a limb of a tree. It was just an osprey sitting in the limb. And I was so proud of that image, because the osprey, for people who don't know, a lot of it is brown, has a little bit of white around the crown of its head. People confuse it with an eagle sometimes, but they're very different looking birds if you really know them. But anyway, I took my buddy Tom, and he was critiquing me, and he said, yeah, nice picture of a bird sitting on a limb. And I'm like, that's all you got to say? He goes, well, what is it? It's a picture of a bird sitting on the limb of a tree. What do you want me to say? And I was so offended. I was so upset. I thought, man, this is just such, I mean, look how in focus that bird is. And look, the limb, I even got the tree limb in focus. And, you know, I blurred out the background, and, you know, I shot it at F1.8. And look. Yeah, it's a bird sitting on a limb. What do you want me to say? I was happy with the image. That should have been good enough, right? And so for a lot of you, if you're happy with your picture, that should be good enough for you. Learn from it, try to improve, but in the end, that should be good enough for you. All right, I whinged on longer than I thought I would. You take care of yourself till next time. If you don't mind, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.